Hi, I'm Alan Wenzel with Freepod, and I'd like to welcome you to this in-depth interview today. In the last few years, homeowners across the United States have seen a great deal of volatility in the premiums that they pay for property and casualty insurance on their homes. Very simply, homeowners insurance is getting more expensive. Joining me today to help us better understand what's happening in the insurance world, particularly in the world of home insurance, is Tricia Mickley, CEO of Frontier Mount Carroll Mutual Insurance Company, based in Mount Carroll and Lincoln, Illinois. Tricia also serves as a treasurer for the National Association of Mutual Insurance Companies out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Tricia, welcome to the interview today. It's so nice to have you take some time away from your busy schedule to talk to us. Before we start, Tricia, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and the company that you head here in Mount Carroll?
Sure. Thanks, Alan, for having me and talking about this extremely important topic. And it's really affecting us all at this point in time. So hopefully I can help your listeners shed a little light onto what's going on in the home insurance market. As you said, my name's Tricia Mickley. I have worked for Mount Carroll Mutual for over 25 years. We did do a merger with a company in Lincoln, Illinois. And so then our name now is Frontier Mount Carroll Mutual. We write in the entire state of Illinois and only in the state of Illinois. We write property insurance for homeowners, farm owners, and rental properties. We have been doing that since 1888. And as of today, we currently have about 15,000 policyholders throughout Illinois.
It's been a busy 2 or 3 years for the insurance industry. And I'm sure, Tricia, you've seen that here in your office. Can you talk to us a little bit about, and let's just start at the beginning. What's contributing to these rises in premiums for household insurance? Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening out there?
Sure. I'll give you my opinion on what I think is going on. I call it at this point the three-headed monster, and it's really all hit us at once. And so it's really driving up the costs of insurance. The first one started back in 2020 with the inflation. It really hit high. We've had a lot of higher construction costs because of it, with the supply chain stoppage. That really started, the inflation on those materials just to repair your items when they needed to replace your house, to build your house, that we have seen really skyrocket.
For example, the cost of lumber, shingles, copper piping, all of that kind of material had just really shot up in costs in recent years, hasn't it?
It has. There was one study I saw that compared from 2020, and I believe this was sometime in late 23, maybe early 24, that said all of those building materials, the average cost had gone up over 40%.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. And then you throw labor costs in there as well. They have obviously risen over the time here because of inflation being so high. Employers have to pay those construction workers a lot more as well.
So when you talk about replacing a house that's been destroyed in some kind of a disaster, fire or wind damage, even of some kind, is costing a lot more to repair our homes than it was 5 years ago.
Yes, it is. Again, another example of that, I just looked at my own house and what the replacement cost was in 2020 to what it is in 2024, and it has gone up 50%.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So, that goes right along what we just talked about with the costs of all those materials and that. So yeah, 50% more if you have a claim or, God forbid, a total disaster to fix your house back up.
What are the other factors, Tricia, that contribute, besides inflation, what other factors have contributed to this rise in premiums?
Sure. We've all heard about the change in the weather patterns, whether you want to call it global warming, climate change, whatever it is, the weather patterns have changed. We have seen normally in the Midwest here, we may get one major storm a year. Usually before 5 years ago, it was probably one every couple of years a big storm would go through Illinois, whether it's a tornado or a large hail event, just even a high wind event. In 2020, we heard the word derecho. That was the first time I had ever heard the word derecho. That went through our territory. We had several claims out of that and were able to get them all accomplished. Then in 2023, we had 5 major events go through the state of Illinois that affected
Wow.
Frontier Mount Carroll Mutual. And like I said, we might have seen 20, in the 20 years before that. So it was really just a significant change in events that have been coming through the Midwest in the last few years that have affected that.
To that point, Tricia, I've read that Tornado Alley has been moving geographically in the country to include more parts of the Midwest that normally weren't in, we think of Tornado Alley, Texas, Oklahoma. Now it's into Missouri, Illinois. It's changing. It's different than it was.
It is. Yeah. When I started with Mount Carroll back in the early 2000s, we would consider, I believe it's Interstate 70 that goes across southern Illinois. Mm-hmm. If south of there was seeing a lot of tornado activity in the early 2000s. And yes, you're exactly right. It has moved north, and we've seen a lot up here in northern Illinois lately.
So we've got inflation. We've got these catastrophic events. I guess that's what they're called. Big weather events that just can impact a whole great number of not only homeowners, but the insurance company. And then what's the third one? You talked about this 3-headed monster. What's the third one, Tricia?
Sure. We call that reinsurance. And let me explain that a little bit for your listeners, because that's probably a new term they've not heard of.
Okay.
So reinsurance is what insurance companies buy to protect themselves. It's our insurance. So we purchase from different companies outside, in the United States, and it's also purchased globally, insurance in case we have one of these catastrophic events. We look at our book and we understand what we can take for a risk and what we can afford to pay. And then above and beyond that, we buy an insurance policy that says if we reach this limit, then this insurance policy that we buy, called reinsurance, will kick in, and then they will help, reimburse us for some of those losses. In the Midwest, as I mentioned, the last 5 years have been pretty tough sledding here. And our reinsurers are now looking at us as a larger risk than they were the previous 5 years before that, because we've had more catastrophic events. So we have seen our reinsurance costs go up over 56% since 2020.
Wow.
And along with those contracts that we also, we purchase, we also have what they call a retention, which in your insureds and your listeners would think of it as their deductible.
Okay.
If they have a loss, they've got a certain amount that they pay first, and then their insurance company will come in and pay anything above that deductible. In reinsurance, it's called retention. We have also seen those retentions increase since 2020 to 250% higher.
Wow. So your deductible, in a sense, has really gone up. So you're paying that much more on losses as a company before your insurance company kicks in to pay the difference.
You're exactly right. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. We have more at risk.
I know it's hard to look into the future and know what's going to happen, but what do you think the trend lines are going to be, Tricia, for insurance, particularly given those 3 uncontrollable factors? Weather certainly, and reinsurance, you never know. And can we control inflation? But what do you think is going to happen in the next 5 years? Yeah. Worse, better? If you knew that, you'd be...
That's a great question.
You'd be president.
We have seen things stable here towards the end of 2024. Things did seem to stable. The reinsurance market that I talked about, where we go buy our insurance to help protect our policyholders, it has stabilized a little bit. It did not increase significantly for 2025 like it had for 21, 22, 23, and 24. So, but it's not coming down to where those levels it was back in the, the early 2020s.
Yeah.
So, we've had to unfortunately raise rates quite a bit to help pay for these costs that we've been talking about increasing. I'm hoping with the reinsurance where it's at, it does seem like inflation is getting under control. Again, I don't see it going back down to pre-2020 levels.
Sure not.
We all know going to the grocery store, it still costs a lot more, even though they're telling us it's better, but it's still extremely high.
So it's leveling off a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I'm hoping that those huge increases that you have seen over the last few years aren't going to continue into the future. However, the future's unknown. So, but
right.
it at this point, it looks promising. If we can keep the weather under control, that will help a lot.
Before I talk about what homeowners can do to help with their own coverages and premium payments, I'd like to talk just for a moment, if I could, Tricia, about some of these natural disasters around the country. The LA fires that are currently unfolding out in Southern California. We've always worried about hurricanes in Florida. How do those I'm not going to call them national events, but events in different parts of the country affect what goes on here in Illinois? Does it at all?
It does indirectly. So we don't have any risks out in California or down in Florida.
Okay.
But as we talked about with that reinsurance market, it is a national market. It's a global market. Those fires that are happening out there will affect that reinsurance market. So those dollars are going to go help those companies out in California. And so they need to make a profit as well.
Right, to stay in business.
Yep, just like all of us.
Right,
so they will have to raise some rates. So obviously those rates would be raised more for those companies that are directly affected by the fires. But the whole market will go up in total as well. So indirectly, it will have some bearing on us.
Not direct and maybe not in great numbers, but it will have some effect eventually.
Yes.
Even indirectly.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about what homeowners can do to offset their increases in costs of insurance, Tricia. Are there things that we can do to kind of help ourselves a little bit here?
Yeah, sure. The first thing I would do is reach out to your agent and visit with them and see if they have any other ideas. But just some off the top of my head is, look at your deductible. A lot of us have had their policy with the same company, the same agent for many years. Those deductibles used to be pretty low. Some companies have forced you to take some higher ones over the years, but some have not. So I would guess I'd start there and look to see, can you, what's the savings for you there? That's a great place to start.
I recall years ago knowing people who had a zero deductible on their insurance policies. That's not even realistic anymore. To expect the insurance company to pay from $1 on. What is a standard, or I know every case is different, but what would be a recommendation for someone to look at? $1,000 deductible or $2,500, $500? Where would someone likely want to fall?
Yeah, I think you would want to start no less than $1,000.
No less than $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, I would say $1,500. I would also look to see there's some wind hail deductibles being put on policies now that are higher. So, you may have your deductible for fire and collision and things like that may be $1,000, but if a wind event comes through, you may have a higher deductible. Some companies are even doing percentage deductibles, which get very confusing. So again, reaching out to your agent and finding out for sure what happens if you have a fire, what happens if you have a wind event, what are you going to have to pay out of your pocket, and then determine if you can pay a little bit more than that. And that will definitely help your premium.
Does it help not to insure old dilapidated buildings on the back 40? Just take insurance off of some buildings that just aren't worth it anymore?
Absolutely, yeah. On farm policies, if you've got some buildings out there that you're not using them for farming purposes because they're, 30, 40, 50 years old, they're old cribs, for an example, you're not going to use them. I would definitely look at taking them off.
So raising the deductible would be a good strategy as a way to lower your premium or to keep your premium the same, because that happens a lot too. And $1,000, no less than $1,000, maybe even look at a $1,500 deductible, which means, okay, put $1,000 away in the bank. So if you have a claim and it goes, over you've got $1,000 to pay your portion of it. But that's good advice. Anything else homeowners can do, Tricia?
Yeah, the other thing I would tell them is just to maintain their property. Keep things up, because insurance companies do come back and look at things in your property every once in a while. And, you want to keep the outside of your house looking nice. You want to keep your roof up to date if you can. And, just do as much to have some pride and ownership your property.
If you don't keep up with repairs on a property, eventually when a strong wind comes through, it's more likely to blow down or to blow a hunk of it off. And if you haven't maintained it as you go, your property is more susceptible to damage, I'm guessing, when you have a storm.
Absolutely.
So keep that up.
Yep, correct.
Do you advise, I know that this happens a lot with car insurance, and that's a whole nother topic, but people like to shop around. If they're, my car rates are going way up, so I'm going to shop, or I'm going to go online and find an auto insurer that's a lot cheaper than what I'm paying now. Do you advise that for homeowners, to shop around, to find a lower cost company for yourself, or what are the ins and outs and the goods and the bads with that?
Yeah, as anybody that's I'm in insurance, I've had that question asked from friends and family. What can I do? Where should I go? And my first advice to them is pay your premium, get your premium paid, and then go visit with your agent. I really value the independent agency system. They've got other companies. Frontier Mount Carroll can't be everything for everybody. But I would definitely, like I said, first thing, pay your premium, make sure you get that taken care of, and then visit with your agent and see if there's other things and get their advice. I don't recommend shopping around and moving your homeowners every year. Companies do watch that.
Do they?
Yes, they do. So I don't recommend that, and I don't recommend changing for a small amount of money. If you can save a good chunk of change, then it's definitely worth looking at.
Sure.
But you need to just evaluate everything, and again, use your independent agent to do that.
It seems like every once in a while you run into somebody say, "Yeah, I went with a lower cost insurer and it saved me money for a year or two," and then suddenly the rates really jumped up. It's kind of like you give a lowball offer, and then a year or two down the road, you're back to where you were before you made the change. You see that happen occasionally too? Yeah,
we're pretty consistent in keeping our rates steady here. So we don't usually lower them, hire them, move
I'm
them
thinking
around.
Of companies that are not quite as straight with everybody, or I shouldn't say that, but companies that are just not conducting business the way in which you are.
Yeah. And you do see some, we haven't seen it because of the market the way it is, but you will see some companies, new companies come into the state of Illinois, and they will do that. They'll trying to attract new business, right? And expand into a market. And then they realize they need to put them up higher. But again, go to your independent agent and value what they say to you.
So it sounds like the agent really has may have options available to you that you're not even aware of. And so you sit down and talk to them all the way from, let's take a look at your deductibles. Let's take a look at other things you may be insuring. Let's take a look at maybe another company that I can help you research and identify that would be good for you. They may have options that you're just wouldn't have any idea until you talk to them.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So, Tricia, as we, kind of wrap up this interview and look down the road for what's coming, what final words of advice or caution or wisdom would you like to offer our listeners as someone who's been in the insurance field for a long time and is very knowledgeable about what's happening? What do you want to leave with us, the listener?
Yeah, we just continue down the path you are. Make sure you have your properties insured. It's extremely important these days with the cost of things that you do have the right policy in place. So I would, encourage them to visit with their agent and make sure everything's looking like they need it. Let things change and you forget to tell your agent. So just have a visit with them.
I didn't even think of that, Tricia. Some people might think, well, I can do without insurance. I'll take a risk for a few months or for a year or two. That is really not something you'd ever recommend to anyone.
No, absolutely not.
You never know when that wind's going to blow or the storm's going to come through, and then you're caught.
Yep. Yeah. Tornadoes used to happen in the summer months, right? But we've had them in December and January now. So yeah, you never know. So yeah, again, first thing first, pay your premium and then go visit with your agent and see if there's anything else they can help you out with.
I've been talking with Tricia Mickley from Frontier Mount Carroll Mutual Insurance Company here in Mount Carroll, Illinois, with offices in Lincoln, Illinois. I'm so grateful that you've taken some time, Tricia, to talk to us. Thanks so much. Listeners, we want you to tune into our regular news podcast every Thursday at noon on all major podcast platforms, or go to our website for Freepod or WNIJ Public Radio in DeKalb. In-depth interviews such as this one drop every Tuesday at noon in those same locations. Thank you again, Tricia, for being with us today. And good luck to you in the insurance year ahead.
Thanks, Alan. Have a great day.
Same to you. And thank you, listeners, and thanks to all who helped make this Freepod broadcast possible, including the Mass Communications Department at Highland and all the volunteers who work to bring you the news you have been missing.